I've always thought that music needs to be motivated um, by a sense of fun or a sense of urgency or something. It needs some motivational thing. You can't just be doing it because you think people will like it and give you money for it. It for me at least has to have some personal reward, which in many cases is just having some fun with it.
Is sound exploration fun for you?
Yeah, it always has been. I was always interested in that. When I was still in high school and living at home, I never really had a lot of money, so I used to go to the local record store and just go directly to the cutout bin and start looking for things that, there was only one copy in the entire store. And it would cost maybe 69 cents or a dollar or something for an LP. And I would buy things like Eastern European electronic music, both because it was affordable and because I liked the covers of the records. There would usually be some psychedelic graphic of some kind.
Do you mean like Stockhausen and that kind of stuff?
Stockhouse, even more obscure than that. All these like Turkish, Eastern European kind of artists who did the old fashioned, what they called music concrete, which was they didn't have synthesizers in those days, so they would like take found sounds or a poetry recital or something like that, and then cut the pieces of tape all up and stick them back together again in weird ways, but always sort of conforming to the rules of music in as much as there was dynamics in it. There's usually a story being told of some kind. There will be thematic elements as well. It isn't just a stream of noise that never repeats itself. And so I learned a lot about the abstract part of making music by listening to electronic music. And that it doesn't have notes and typical rhythms and stuff like that, like pop music, but it has all the aims and and dynamics and things that any kind of music would have.
Well, I think I speak for me, the guys, and make weird music and all the fans when I say that one of the things that we find most charming about you is your ability to change gears and move into other areas of interest that are there because you fucking like them. And that's what you're interested in, and that's what you're going to explore. And that's a really great way to approach life.
Well, as I say, I always had the advantage of being a record producer as well. And while most artists, when they go into the studio, they want to make a good record, but they're equally concerned with the commercial success of it because their career will end unless they have some. And I made a lot more money producing other people's records than I would ever make on my own. And that gave me the freedom when I was making my own records to only worry about, what's the content? What do I feel like doing this time? Uh, I don't have to worry about whether it sells or not. And that also very much aggravated people at the label when I had no concern about the commercial aspects of the record. Um, but that's kind of what you get. Certain kind of artists are there not necessarily to be corralled into whatever is popular at the time. Some artists are they're there to represent artistry. They're not to represent the commerce part of it, but the possibilities of recorded music. And sometimes those things are commercial failures, but a Wizard of True Star after something anything could have been considered a terrible commercial flop. But in the longer run, that record has been more influential on other artists than Something Anything was, because Something Anything is too easy. That was the reason why I moved on afterwards. I was writing songs in 15, 20 minutes because I had the formula down. There's It's gratifying for an audience because they don't get thrown a lot of curveballs, but for an artist, it can be frustrating after a while, and it happens to every artist. Most commercially successful artists invariably want to do, a side project where they do just the stuff they feel like doing and not the stuff that they're expected to do.
So you're talking about Wizard of True Star. There's so many little interesting areas there. Like, is that first home studio stuff?
Well, we built the studio to make that record and records like it. So you could say it was a home studio because it's definitely not a commercial studio. It was part of what I wanted to explore, the idea of having a musical idea and taking it fresh out of your brain and into the studio, as opposed to having to do all the scheduling, uh, and also the process when you're in the studio and you spend half the day trying. All right, that's enough. You spend half the day, Roxy, shut up. you spend uh, you spend half the time trying to get into the mood to do a take, and then your session runs out. That kind of thing. You know, you never know when the inspiration is going to strike, and you never know how long it's going to take to actually get it down to your satisfaction. So the whole idea of having a studio that was just our plaything, that became the norm afterwards for us. And I guess ultimately the dream of most artists, which is to have your own space and record when you're inspired to, and go as long as you want. I was pretty much resigned to not being a singles artist, and I never went to the label and said, "Oh, you have to release this song as the next single," because I've always made a clear distinction between me as a producer, a maker of music, a manufacturer, and someone who markets. People who market music, they understand a whole realm of other things that I really almost don't want to have anything to do with. How you cajole someone into adding your record to their playlist and all this other old-fashioned record business stuff. I always left that to people, who took that part seriously. But at the same time, I would always instruct them that they don't tell me how to make the records, and I won't tell them how to sell the records.
I like that.
Thusly, I didn't sell a whole lot of records.
Didn't you?
Well, I had moments. I've had moments, but for the most part, it's only been my more devoted fans who are guaranteed to buy the records, because it's it does make a difference whether you have singles, not necessarily from the standpoint of whether your albums become successes because of it, but simply because it keeps you in the public consciousness somehow. It's surprising the number of people who believe that I retired after Hello, It's Me, because they never heard anything else on the radio. Or if they did, they didn't know it was me. Um, yeah, it was just that sort of one moment. And then when I moved on to doing more progressive things and, uh, and more experimental things, a lot of people just thought that, I retired after something, anything. And that was that. And then I come to their town, like recently, like in the last couple of decades or something like that, and I'm doing like an electronica show, and they show up expecting to hear "Hello, It's Me," the way it was on the original record. And so I get a whole lot of consternation sometimes when when people who think that I have retired and I only come out to play my hits wind up at a show and realize that it's a bunch of music they've never heard before.